right, everybody. It is Friday Eve. That's right. You made it this far. It is the week after Dreamforce, and you are going to be sitting back. Please grab your favorite beverage, y'all. We've got some amazing, amazing speakers for y'all today. Bear with me. Like many, I did catch COVID. So I have got my cough drops ready. Today, we are going to be talking about the highlights of Dreamforce 2023. So maybe you couldn't make it in person. Maybe you're watching on Salesforce Plus. Maybe you've got questions about some of the latest products, or you just want to connect with some of your old friends. Well, you are in for a treat this next hour. We do have some pre-submitted questions, y'all. Before I present our speakers, just want to let y'all know we have some pre-submitted questions. They're going to come up. That said, you can always DM me if you have any questions or raise your hand. I'm going to take a note and we're going to try and get to your questions and the answer they were received. If we don't get to all of your questions today, dear readers, spoiler alert, we never do because this hour goes by so quickly. We want you to continue the conversation in the comments section of this event. With that said, though, y'all, I am so excited to introduce these speakers today. We have tuning in all the way from the UK, Todd Halfpenny, Chief Mobile Technical Architect at Catify. We've got our Pallavi, Agarwal, CEO and founder at Kander, who literally just came off of a red eye for this conversation. So we thank you again, Pallavi. And we've got our old Olshansky, Adam, Salesforce Technical Architect at Google Play, who also was at Dreamforce and is tuning in from the Bay. How y'all doing?
Doing well, Tristan. Thanks for having us.
Yes. And Todd, I know this is a audio only, so people can kind of tune in and tune out as they want, but I want to say that Einstein picture was top notch. How did you make that?
Oh, thank you. That's actually, I appreciate that. And thanks for having me, first of all.
Yeah.
The wig I actually purchased for my second or third talk that I was giving at the London Calling Conference. It happens over here in the UK. I was doing a talk on the Einstein vision recognition API, I think. And so I worn that. In previous years, I've worn Princess Leia hair buns for a talk. I can't remember what relevance that was to the talk I was doing.
Feels very relevant today.
Yeah, but it's a perfect wig for this call, I think.
I appreciate you. And Pallavi, how are you doing? I'm so sorry putting you like from a red eye, but you're here.
No, it's fine. It's the West Coast, East Coast travel. I'm good. And I just want to thank everyone for being here and for amazing Adam and Todd for joining us.
Yes, we agree. Y'all, there's a lot to cover, and we want to make sure we get some live questions from our audience. Again, anyone from the audience, you can drop any questions in the comments from this event. If you're not so comfortable, you can DM me, or better yet, raise your hand, and then we'll circle back to you in the order they were received. But I just want to dive into it, y'all. I want to go over first, overall, what were your overall impressions at a high level? 60 seconds, just want to know what you thought. Watching from Salesforce Plus, Todd. Overall impressions.
First impressions were that it was, I mean, obviously there was the FOMO, fear of missing out was extreme, I think. It looked like a good event from what I saw, which I guess brings me around to the fact that the Salesforce Plus experience this year, I think, is improving year on year. It was nice to see the keynotes streamed as close to live as possible, which was nice. They hadn't done that in previous years. It was a shame we didn't get to see all the sessions, like some of the theatre sessions. Obviously, there's so much knowledge being shared by so many kind of people within the ecosystem. It would be lovely to catch more of that. Yeah, all in looked really good, and I was just sitting here very jealous. But yeah, happy to have the content that I could get hold of, I guess.
I love that. I love what you said about the Salesforce Plus keynotes too, because a lot of those people put in so much work. And I think there's like 1,500 sessions. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. Fact check is real. But like there's a lot to cover. So I just want to say shout out to everyone, all the event organizers who made Salesforce Plus happen. Y'all are amazing. I'm going to go over to Pallavi. Overall, first impression, 60 seconds, go.
It was good to have everybody in person. I think this was the biggest conference we've had since the pandemic. So it was great. The energy there was amazing. We actually didn't get to see everybody, believe it or not. It felt like old Dreamforces again, where people are there, but you can't see them. But the focus on AI, the product announcements, some of the things that they talked about, which I know we'll get into hopefully later, were really amazing from a consulting standpoint, because I was already automatically having conversations right after with our customers on what we could do to help them and elevate them. So it was very powerful.
I love it. Same question, Adam.
Yeah, kind of like what Pallavi was saying. It felt really big and hard to see everybody. And Todd, if it makes you feel better, I didn't get to go to most of the sessions either. I feel like they give you a recap now after Dreamforce. I think it's that I went to 8 sessions total over the 3 days, and most of those were keynotes, I feel like. So definitely a lot of stuff I wish I had time to do and wish I could have seen people, but definitely great to get a better understanding of what Salesforce is doing in the AI space. And I also definitely have a better understanding of what Data Cloud is and what Data Cloud can do, which was not the case last year. So overall, from a product standpoint, I think it was pretty cool to see. But yeah, definitely wish I had more time to do things, to see people, and to learn more.
Facts, same. We're going to come back to the AI and product piece, but I do want to dive in a little bit to favorite sessions. So you attended 8 sessions. Adam, what was your favorite session? Like, which session really stood out to you? And what was a key insight that you want to share with our listeners?
Sure. It's hard to pick because there were definitely a bunch of good ones that I went to. I think it's probably close between the admin keynote. Despite being a developer, I still love seeing what admins are launching, and they have some great stuff around being able to make integrations as an admin through Flow. They were talking about HTTP callouts, which is a very powerful tool for admins to be able to integrate without code. That was really cool to see. And then the other one, Cheryl Feldman gave a kind of a roadmap talk of all the stuff she's working on in regards to user security, and a lot of great stuff coming out there as well. Kind of tools to be able to see what's in your permission sets, be able to compare permission sets. So a lot of great stuff coming on the user security roadmap. Those were kind of the more immediate things that I think I'm excited about, with some of the AI stuff being a little bit more off in the future.
Here for this. I'm curious for you, Pallavi, other than obviously speaking twice and co-organizing a ton of events, what was your favorite session that you did attend, and why? Was it amazing?
I'm gonna sound cheesy, but I always, if there's only one session I can make, I always want to sit in that keynote, because the keynote sets the tone for the entire conference, and it covers the highlights of what are going to be the key things that are being covered in the other specialized keynotes. So sitting in the main keynote and just seeing how the stuff they talked about in that keynote was real conversational pieces. So talking about the toxicities, the hallucinations, the risks around AI, the roadmaps of what we need to do with Data Cloud, and getting our infrastructure where it needs to be to use AI in a responsible way. And all of that, like really setting the bar and the roadmap, which resonates with customers who are going to be using this technology and applying it. I think the keynote was very well done this year in taking feedback of like, what are the things AI is not a magic pill. So like, what are the things that we need to do to prepare for AI? And I think the keynote spent some time focusing on that, which was very important.
I love that. And to our Todd, watching from across the pond, what was the best session you saw in Salesforce Plus, and what was a key element that you want to share with the listeners, why it stood out to you?
I was going to say that the true to the core. I think I'm going to leave that just because it's always such a big hitter. For me, the terms of the background and the role I'm in, and the community group I lead, the developer community group in London, the dev keynote is always a good one for me. I've got to say, I have so much admiration for the level of work that goes into the demos. So all the people in the dev relations teams, they really put a lot of work into them. and so seeing the use cases, especially things like the Einstein for devs, seeing that working is really cool. But I think beyond that, the stuff I made a note on that's been really valuable to me already, that I can relate to my team internally and to the user groups, is actually seeing the features and functions and things that are going to be available in the next release, and really puts a lot of solid use cases around some of the things that have come out. So I was really excited to see the Apex roadmap and the LWC roadmap, but then also the stuff that's actually dropped and you can start playing with now. I think sometimes you can get caught up in the hype, things that don't quite exist yet, all this kind of vaporware. So actually seeing and being able to get hands-on with some of the stuff, I think that was really key. So dynamic components in LWC, the scale center, the code analyzer, plugins, all of these things are stuff that people are going to be able to use kind of either right now or within the next month. And that's really valuable, I think. And seeing those demos in the release readiness live and the Apex keynote were really good to take away, I think.
I love that. And we're definitely going to come back to some of those because we want to make sure we hold a space. I do want to talk a little bit more about, from a developer perspective. And thank you so much for, the work that you do organizing in your local community. Like, I just want to shout out to you, Pallavi, anyone who's listening to this recording live, like, volunteering and giving your time back to the community in that way is so exceptional. So you don't have to do it. You do it out of free will. So I just want to say thank you. But I do want to go back to you, Todd, in that point too. And, anyone on this panel can chime in. What are you doing with your developers and teams to get ready to kind of try out some of these new features that are in beta? And what are you doing to help them get ready for everything once it's GA as a business and as a team?
Oh, that's a big, a couple of big questions.
Well, why not? It's early here.
Yeah, that's true. So the key things to do, I guess, from us internally as a product company is to get eyes on these things as early as possible. So we're spinning up the pre-release orgs that we have, so that the orgs that used to be on the GSO instance, I think, getting hands on with those and playing with them as early as we can. And I guess trying to get involved in some of the pilots as well helps. Then we can give feedback in to the engineering team to let them know the kind of direction, if they're going, it's suiting what we as a product company would want to be doing. And then straight on, like, getting our product managers involved, knowing what's coming up. So to try and be ahead of the curve as much as possible, so that when things do drop, we're not playing catch up, but actually we can be on the front foot and maybe release features that are taking advantage of all these things, especially things that are going to improve in performance, I guess, are really good for us, and developer experiences. So a lot of it's about education, I guess, is a key part of my role internally in the business, is making sure that the people in the different roles are aware of what's coming up and how we can plan for it, making sure there's space on the roadmap to get it in, and trying to get buy-in to get that time and resource for those things as well. That obviously comes in quite handy for me, then being able to relay the similar kind of information to our community group attendees as well. Yes, I guess the thing to break it down is to try and get in early and keep up to date with the ever-changing release notes as well. Things move fast, don't they, sometimes?
Well,
Todd, I thought I was done studying in my life and was ready to burn my books after my grad degree, but I realize it's forever learning in this space. Like, things are evolving so much. We're constantly learning and trying to keep up with it. And there's so much to get through, but we're doing similar stuff, right? We have to prepare from customer perspective, because our customers come to us and are like, what do we need to know? What do we, they don't all get to attend Dreamforce, so they're looking at us to be the experts around it. And it's staying up with the product roadmaps, but then also thinking about how each product and the use cases apply to each customer's journey and scenario and where they're at, and how to build those roadmaps around it to get them ready.
Well, and you bring up a really good point here too, Pallavi, because I know there's a lot of, leaders like yourself that are listening in. I'm curious for you, talking a little bit about readiness and customers, but also going back to products that were announced. Is there any particular product update and or new release that really stood out to you? And you're like, oh yes, my customers are going to love this.
Yeah, we're already having conversations with our customers about if you guys did not hear at the main keynote, it was announced that Data Cloud and Tableau will be free for all customers moving forward. So that's a game changer for our customers. And that we were having this, I was having a working session with one of my customers right after Dreamforce, like just this week, and we were talking about it, and it's like, yeah, if you guys really want to get ready for AI, here's some of the things that you need to do. Got to get your data and your data quality assurance, all the data structure there, your infrastructure itself. You want to have like the right KPIs and metrics. These tools that Salesforce just started to give away for free, which I think is phenomenal, is really that roadmap to help get you AI ready for the features that are coming that can then elevate and create expediency in the business.
I love that. Adam, same question to you, because I want to kind of hold a little bit more space around, the new products. We talked a little bit about some of the new dev tools. I wanted to specifically kind of hold a space for, part of the dev keynote, right? We saw, a glimpse of what was then called Apex GPT back at Trailblazer DX, showing how developers can make, use of more natural language processing to enhance their coding writing abilities. And then now we have this brand new Einstein for developers, right? A generative AI coding tool built exclusively for Salesforce specific coding languages. I'm curious, like, what are you most excited about? And this is totally open to the panel, but what are you the most excited about for this beta? And what do you think Salesforce developers should start doing to get ready to use this tool for GA?
Sure, yeah. So immediately when I saw this, I sent a link to my entire team. I was like, hey, let's start playing around with this and seeing what we can do. Definitely very excited about the potential. I think one of the biggest things, honestly, maybe isn't the most intuitive, but it's that we need to learn how to write prompts better, because I think these tools are very powerful. But I was Daniel Stange from Germany was playing around with it on Twitter and got very different results based on for the same question with different prompts, basically. And so telling it, hey, you have to be a good developer and you have to follow best practices and you have to, not put all the logic in a trigger, gave very different results than just, hey, write me some code. So, very cool to see that it can write code for you, but also important to keep in mind, you have to really tell it exactly how you want it to write the code. So I think maybe a little bit of more work to be done there, but great to see the potential for sure. And very excited to start playing around with that. I think the other thing for me as a developer, I don't necessarily need, obviously I'd love for if it could write test classes for me at some point, but I think the more immediate term is actually, again, maybe not that intuitive, but the Einstein for flows, right? I generally have to look, because I write code all the time, but I don't write too many flows. If I need to write a flow, I have to look it up every step of the way what I'm doing. If I can get Einstein to write 70% of a flow for me, that's going to save me a ton of time. I think Einstein for developers will also come in handy when teaching people to code. If it can write 70% of the code for you and you just need to be able to read it, understand it, and tweak it, I think that's going to be tremendously powerful as well. So definitely excited to see where these tools go. Keeping in mind, I think there are a lot of things like, prompt engineering and figuring out exactly how to turn code that it writes into production-ready code that we're going to have to figure out along the way. But very, very excited about the potential.
I love that. Same question, Todd. Thinking a little bit more about Einstein for developers. Thoughts, concerns?
Oh yeah, I mean, so this is I'm really excited for this. It's a strange one. I mean, the demos look good for sure, and I have played with it myself, and it didn't quite work as I expected it to begin with. Kind of repeating Adam's point there about the prompts, you have to kind of word it in a certain way. What I found really positive though is, so I reached out on Twitter saying I don't think I can. This isn't working. I don't think quite as I expect it to. And I had the dev relations team come back. So Mohit come back. And then I guess somebody on the engineering team had replied as well. So I got in a good dialogue, and it was very clear that they want to have as much feedback as possible. from anyone out there. So if people are listening, then yeah, have a play. And if you're not happy with the way it's working, you can actually feedback within the VS Code extension. Gives you a feedback mechanism. So you can write back and say this was good, this wasn't good, or I expected this to behave in a certain way and it didn't. So that's all I think really handy. I'd like to see really how far it can be pushed beyond just being like I want to see it more than I can do with just a VS Code like code snippet, because I can have command palettes to say, all right, create me this skeleton class, or create me a trigger, or get me do something that gets me all the, like write a SQL query that gets me all the fields and limits by this. You could do that with extensions which are kind of that's not AI. So what I'm interested in really is seeing how the generative AI piece can really enrich those kind of functions that exist or could exist already, especially when it comes into taking in best practices in terms of security and performance. I think that's going to be a real win for lots of people. And definitely, I hadn't even thought about it from a teaching point of view, Adam, but it's a really good point there. So yeah, start playing with it would be my my point here. Start playing with it now, and then and feedback to the team, and yeah, help shape the direction it's going in. I think we're at a stage now where it's still possible for that to be a real situation.
I love that. And this is just something I always go back to because I love great ideas, but I'm like, how are we going to apply them? And I think that part about holding a space for learning is so important. And so this question is kind of open to the whole panel. What advice would you give to leaders that have, fewer people on their teams? There are a host of new products coming out. You've picked which ones you really want them to learn. What advice would you give to those leaders, though, to really stress the importance of, one, holding a space to learn some of these tools with their teams, and two, like applying some of those findings? I guess more so focused on that learning piece, because I think that's really critical for adoption. And I'm going to open it up to the whole panel.
Yeah, on that one, it's interesting because there's been a lot of industry conversations, right? Of do you do a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach on this? And I think the real answer that's really being discussed is it's both. You want to give your team the power to explore these tools and really help elevate each of their roles in the way that they need the support or want to expand. But you also want to create some governance, and also like it's okay to do this. It's safe space to do this, in the sense that those conversations they're becoming more and more prevalent in the workspace, and maybe even providing some training and education around it, as well as maybe mentoring and coaching if somebody already has that, or if somebody in the team is like, hey, I really want to take this and really, like Todd was saying, he's playing around with it, he's struggling, but he's constantly at it because he wants to get to the right place. Then maybe having someone like Todd in your organization be like, can you do a lunch and learn, or turn this into a program and help others also go through what you learned and how they can adapt with it. So I think it's a bit of train the trainers, as well as allowing those conversations to be like, it's okay to do this, but also keeping in mind what's okay and what's not okay, and providing some level of guardrails so that there's no risk or exposures from a data perspective.
We're all about that security life. I love that. Adam, kind of going back to you, same question, because I do want to hold before we go on a few other keynotes and products, and just a little FOMO for Todd. You're kidding. We're kidding. But I do want to go back to that learning piece too. Like, how do you and your organization, Adam, or at least for your team, how do you, one, prioritize what products specifically you all should be diving into, whether it's a beta? And number two, how do you build that ecosystem of support once you've decided what those tools are that you should be learning?
Sure. I think to Pallavi's point, it's kind of in this industry forever learning to some extent, for better or worse. Keep things interesting, but obviously there's always more to do and more to learn. So I think to a large extent, especially with this AI revolution we're seeing, you really have to be on top of it, or you're going to fall behind very quickly. So we definitely are paying attention to what's going on in the AI space, both in and outside of Salesforce, and as kind of new tools are being developed. We're definitely playing around with them and seeing if we can potentially integrate them into our org workflow, thinking about use cases. I work for Google, and I went to talk to the Google booth at the expo, and they talked about some other integrations that Salesforce and Google were working on. So we're definitely keeping those things in mind as well. But obviously, when a product like this gets released, we want to start playing around with it, like Todd said, and figure out how we can use it, figure out if it's ready for us to use yet. Some of the beta products, I think, we're maybe a little cautious on. But, I definitely like playing around with them in my free time still also, even if it's not ready for us to use in a work setting yet. But yeah, we're definitely keeping an eye on these products and trying to look for use cases and think about ways to integrate them into our workflows.
I love this. And we have some familiar faces in the crowd. I see Jana, and I also see our Steve. So good seeing y'all at the event. Oh, Mr. Eric Dreschfield is in the house, and I got Mr. Russo. Hello, hello. Oh my goodness. And we have our Gilda. Can we just take a moment? Gilda is absolutely incredible. This woman wearing a cape or not wearing a cape is a freaking superhero. We adore you. So just shout out to you, friend. I want to make sure too, though, y'all, we have a few more questions, but this is totally an interactive conversation. So feel free to raise your hand and we can bring you up to the stage if you want to ask live. If you're a little shy, you can DM me as well, but totally an open space. I do want to go back, though, a little bit, y'all, to we talked about this briefly, and I know you talked about this, Pallavi, and we've had a lot of conversations offline. I am so excited that there's all these new amazing AI solutions and 40,000 people, coming in person, people tuning all over the world. But a lot of this is we don't talk about the brunt work that's going to go into getting your organization ready for AI. And I think one of the biggest concerns that a lot of leaders have is around security. And we've talked about this in previous Digital Candor series as well. But I'm curious for y'all, what you all are doing in your orgs to make sure that as you're getting ready to adopt some of these new AI solutions, you're also keeping security top of mind. Because I think this is something that leaders from the board down to, individual contributors, this is something everyone's thinking about. So any recommended practices around ensuring security while you're getting ready to adopt these solutions? I'm going to start with Pallavi.
Yeah, sure. This one's interesting because AI has been around for a long time. What we're talking about is generative AI today and the complicated learning models that are being used to kind of mimic and understand our personalities and incorporate the work in that way and pull data from all these sources. So one is just educating people on what we're talking about, right? What is generative AI? How does it work? What are the impacts of it? Another is then once we have that baseline foundation and understanding of it, is to then really create the guidelines that work for your org. Like certain orgs, for example, in the federal space, AI is a big no right now, right? Because there has to be so many protective firewalls and ways that you have to protect everything you do. So AI is probably not going to be adopted in the federal space anytime soon. And so you really have to look at your own org and your protocols of what are your security needs, what are your overall structure needs. Start thinking about that and then start building a governance plan around it. And then you also have to have some monitoring tools around to see, are people really following that cadence and that governance? If not, what are some of the ways to protect? Even if someone is trying to go outside of those guidelines, how do you stop it from happening? So you do have to have some level of that. But then going back to what I was saying earlier, still creating a safe space, maybe giving people sandboxes that are already configured in a way with those protocols and baselines to say, okay, here's some available sandboxes for you guys to go try out these tools and products. So then they still have the ability to learn and gain the skills they want to gain, utilize it, find ways to create efficiencies in their own work roles without impacting or creating any risks.
I 100% agree. I want to go over to Todd, keeping security top of mind. What's your approach in your org or anything you can share?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be up there with one of the key things, right? And the first time I'd seen a mention of the security layer within like Salesforce's generative AI was was just before the World Tour in London, and I remember talking to people within my organization saying, "Oh, we've like," because they were getting excited about it. I was like, "Well, we're not going to touch it yet, right? This isn't going to be ready." And it was primarily because of the fact that the prompts were going out, and the possibility of leaking data was extraordinarily large. So I was really pleased to see the steps that Salesforce have taken to kind of mitigate that. I don't think that it's going to do everything, or at least, I mean, maybe it will, but I don't think as a business we can for sure be sure of that at the moment. And so we're kind of thinking now about, do we need to put extra steps and gates within our code reviews and flow reviews to make sure that those best practices that we're not entirely sure of yet are even going to be looked for at points before code and other pieces of the product get put through. So I think it's I can't say that we're doing anything yet on this. What we do know is that we need to be doing something about it. We just don't quite know where it's going to go within the processes. Like I said, as a product company, we weren't touching any of this until we knew that there were some security layers in place. And now we're thinking, right, okay, how can we realistically start making use of these things? I think as Pallavi said, that everything's moving very fast at the moment, and so things to keep top of mind is trying to stay educated. And I know that there's a fair few trailhead modules and things out there now. And it's about trying to keep up with it and making sure that people across the business understand the values, right? Understand the jargon that comes along with all of a technology, just like AI. It could be anything else, right? But what's all the jargon? What does it mean for you? What are the value that it's going to bring to businesses? And then also the larger concepts around it as well. I think at the moment, at least for me, I'm unsure where the real killer value is going to come from. There's obviously things in the demos that, oh, that's pretty cool. That's going to save, I don't know, X amount of time on a particular process or whatever. But I still think that we're so early on that actually that bigger things to come. So keeping your eyes open and being aware, I think, is the key here. And yeah, just be aware that things are going to come along. So you're going to have to put process changes in place to put these guardrails in, like Pallavi said. But I don't have anything concrete yet, unfortunately. Sorry.
No. I think that's really, really good. I'm curious, going back to you, Adam, is there anything y'all are doing and putting in place?
I think in general, approaching very cautiously. It's hard right now because, we're being careful. Being Google, we're told, hey, maybe don't be using other companies, LLM tools, use Bard instead. But even with Bard, we're, being told, hey, don't put business data in there. Don't put, any customer information in there. Understandably so. I think a lot of these things are still, in beta and still maybe hallucinating a little bit. And so we definitely have to be careful with, are we, can we be using, can we trust code from some of these tools? Can we be putting business information into some of these tools? And for now, the answer mostly has been no. I think that's going to change at some point. So we're, definitely keeping an eye on these tools and maybe using them for less business critical things, but definitely something to keep in mind as these tools evolve and hopefully get better over time.
I love that. Oh, Pallavi, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I found it really funny in the keynote when even Mark, when he was talking about hallucinations, where he's like, he put in ChatGPT, who is Mark Benioff, and the stuff that would return out of it, he was saying how inaccurate it was, right? But the way it was written, if someone else didn't know anything about Mark Benioff, they would have read it and just believed it. So that's the scary part of AI. And I'm really glad, one of the takeaways from Dreamforce was the way Salesforce has focused on that trust piece to, one, keep your data secure, but then also call out, we don't know what it is yet, so be careful on how you're using it. And really go validate that information and keep teaching it when it's wrong. Tell it it's wrong. Give it the right information so it can learn and evolve from there.
I agree. I agree. Did they use, I mean, maybe this is my COVID brain fog, but did they use the term hallucinations last year? Because I really liked that.
No, they didn't. It's becoming more and more prevalent in the industry as AI is becoming more on the forefront with toxicity, hallucinations, and a few other things. But um, those are hallucination for those who don't know, because I didn't know that term until recently. Also, is basically when it's giving you the wrong information. So they call that hallucination because AI itself is hallucinating and giving you data that it thinks it's accurate when it's not.
And that, friends, is what we call brilliant marketing. But it is also true. But it is also true. I do, though, want to hold a space, y'all, because I have to say, like, I feel like the architect, I mean, I love all the tracks, but the architect track to me is one of my favorites. I feel like it's this beautiful middle ground for people. I loved all the concepts. I was really excited about a lot of the features that came up from the keynote, right? We learned about Scale Center now being available for Salesforce Unlimited Edition. We learned about, Apex Guru Insights, Well-Architected Framework Explorer, Data Cloud Enrichments. I'm curious for our amazing panel, and I want to start with Todd. What were some things that really stood out to you watching the keynote via Salesforce Plus?
In terms of the architect track, do you mean just in or in just?
Yeah, or in general, but mainly around architect. Yeah, I'm just curious.
Architect track. I guess the Scale Center is I think going to be really useful for sure. My concern, not concern, that's wrong, isn't it? That's completely the wrong word. What is it?
You can use whatever you want. This is Digital Candor.
Sorry?
You can say whatever you want. This is Digital Candor.
Yeah,
We're keeping it 100.
I have this problem. Like, the words come out, and they're not the ones I really wish I'd chosen. But it would be nice for Scale Center to be available to the other editions. I think it's going to add such a piece of value. I think in terms of especially dealing with things like performance in areas that it's a shame that it's not going to be available across the board. And coming with that, I think I was really excited to see the Data Cloud and Tableau licenses available. I didn't understand the limits. I got to admit, I haven't read too much on it, but I think they mentioned profiles and data credits, and I don't know what those things are in relation to the Data Cloud and Tableau. But that's really good. I was really excited to hear that. But again, that was left out of the professional edition. So I worry that lots of people like non-profits will lose out on some really valuable pieces of technology that everyone else is now available to use. And that was a shame, I think. Is that okay? Can I say that's a shame instead of that being wrong? I think that's a fair.
We'll allow it. We'll allow it. This is your hour.
Thank you.
No, I agree. And we're going to come back to that because that's definitely something I thought a lot about with all these amazing new solutions. And, Salesforce has done so much for, the global community. I mean, and locally as well, like 100 million for, Oakland and San Francisco public city schools, 100 million for the Children's Hospital. They've done so much incredible work. I think that's one of the things that I think a lot about, and, feel free to chime in, Pallavi, too, is like, how can these nonprofits take advantage of these solutions while also keeping, budget top of mind so they can serve their constituents? And that's open to anybody.
Yeah, it's interesting because this goes back to it's so funny because a lot of what happened at Dreamforce was like real conversations with some of my customers this week, and we were talking about with what Todd just brought up with the licenses, we don't know what the limits are or like how data cloud will be provided. But, one of the things that isn't really being highlighted is they're kind of moving away from licenses instead of licenses to consumption based, which I think is a smart move because even if they're piloting some of the AI features right now with anyone who has unlimited licenses. The unlimited edition, and you're buying credits for consumption versus number of licenses, which I think is also going to be a game changer. And that's what they're doing with Data Cloud. I haven't looked into Tableau yet of what they're doing there, but I know for Data Cloud, it's going to be based on consumption as well. So I think that's giving some of our customers a bit of relief versus they might have a bigger org, but now instead of having to buy a license for everybody, they can just do it by the consumption they need because they might not consume it as much, or they might consume more or whatever. But I think that's a healthier way.
No, that's a good call. And it's good to know for anyone listening. And again, y'all, we do have a few pre-submitted questions. If you want to raise your hand, ask any, please feel free.
Also, just apologize. You might have COVID brain, but I have jet lag brain right now. So I'm stumbling a little bit to find my word.
No, you're okay. For everyone just tuning in, Pallavi just jumped off of a red eye, so we thank you for your service, Pallavi. I do though want to kind of pivot a little bit here too, because this is I think my second in-person one. So much fun. And so sorry for FOMO, Todd. I'm curious, I want to know first, what was the best swag item you got and why? And I'm gonna start with Adam.
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit at the beginning. I feel like I didn't really get to do that many quests and get that much swag this year. I think I went to the Google booth and got a pair of socks, and then a team I was working with gave me some swag. The only actual swag I got from Dreamforce was one of the Cody Squishmallows. I got a bunch of shirts, I guess. The shirts were all pretty cool. But yeah, I didn't actually get that much swag this year. But free shirts from various things are always good.
Okay, I want to call out. Thank you for saying that because I literally just rolled in with my suitcase, and that was the saddest thing of my life. Is I brought extra suitcase space for the swag, and I came back empty-handed. Like no plushies, nothing. And I was like, "What did I do? I did my Dreamforce wrong," And I think Adam, I barely even got to see you, but yeah, the swag game was. There's photos of people having so much swag, and I'm like, how did they find time? Because there was so much going on with content that I was busy running around for that versus having time to do the quest and get any swag myself.
I mean, in your defense, there was a moment when Pallavi, who, for the record, anyone listening, I have never met someone of Pallavi's height and stature move so quickly through a crowd. Like, that alone is a feat. But there was a moment when Pallavi's like, "Oh, plushies," and I was like, "No, Pallavi, we've got somewhere to go." So Pallavi, we will be sure to send you some sort of plushie of your preference. Todd, you though also have your fair share of swag. What is, watching from afar, what was your one trusted piece of swag that you had with you?
Oh, the trusted piece of swag I had with me. Well, it would be wrong for me not to mention Shirtforce t-shirts, I guess. So they're always my favorite. The thing that I mean, there was swag that I really wanted, and I had FOMO because I was like, well, I didn't have the opportunity to pick them up. It was like the little Cody minifigure, I think, was like, oh, I would love to have had one of those. And then I showed my kids a few photos of people who've got the swag and the Squishmallows. I've never seen them look so excited. So I think it's on my my to-do list for the next, I don't know how long. Try and find some Squishmallows because yeah, my kids would go crazy if they saw them.
We'll go on the hunt together because I'm looking for them myself.
Yeah, I don't even know if these are things that only exist to be given away at things. I don't even know if they exist on the stores or not. If they did, then I'd have to start saving up because I'd probably have to get the whole set. But yeah, there was some decent swag out there. I don't know. The best piece of swag I've ever got was it was from a manufacturing show once, and it was like a fidget spinner, but it's a bottle opener. Fidget spinner, so you can play with it, and then you can open a beer, and yeah, it's come in so handy.
I will say I got to swing by on my way to the CGL breakfast. I got to pop into the marketing breakfast, and oh man, one of the best swags that I received, which I also have to be careful because I have long hair, was the fan. It's a marketing moment marketer fan, which just it got hot during certain sessions, and that fan came in so handy. And then they also gave these amazing water bottles that collapse, and I've been using it for the travel for the rest of it. And so I would say that was very like, it was swag that I can also use. So if Gilda's still online, I just want to thank Gilda for coming up with like amazing swag that can be used right away.
I will second that, Gilda. I had one of your fans with me, and there was someone, I think it was during your session, Pallavi, with Jason, and she was in the front, and she was just like overheating, and I just pulled out a brand new fan, and that like changed her life. I was fortunate enough to have planned ahead and had a very, 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 very large fan of my own, which I had a fan popping moment with Leia, and that was probably one of my favorite moments of Dreamforce. And Gilda, I hope you enjoy your Drag Race fan that I gave you as well. I do want to pivot though too, because for people, a lot of times for people who can't attend, right, and budgetary concerns are so real. Shout out to Janine for opening up her house to so many trailblazers that couldn't afford it. You are what community is all about. But I am curious, for anyone who attended in person on this panel, who is the one like celebrity in your mind that you were just like over the moon to finally meet, and why? Todd, I'm so sorry. I love you.
All is forgiven. You're okay.
Thank you. I'm gonna start with Pallavi and then Adam.
Celebrity?
Yeah, or just someone you're like, oh wow.
Well, so for me, I just had a fangirl moment with Parker. He was at an event I was invited to, and I went up to him and I'm like, "Hey, Parker, I don't know if you remember me." And he was like, "Hey, I remember you. I gave you a hoodie." And then he like looked. I was wearing color contacts, and he's like, "But your eyes weren't blue." And I was like, "Oh my god!" For him to remember those kind of details of the amount of people he meets, I was just like, "Wow!" I was there. Like I was already impressed, and I look up to him as a leader and entrepreneur, but to have so much going on and then remember a simple detail like that of somebody's like whether they're wearing colored contacts or not, that was very impressive.
I love that. Adam, same question for you. Favorite celebrity moment?
Yeah, again, I felt like I didn't really get to attend all the sessions I wanted to, and there were a lot of great people there. So I missed Sam Altman, and I missed Kristen Bell, I guess, was there at a few sessions. I think the very last session of Dreamforce was like a comedy show with Seth Meyers and Kristen Bell. And 45 minutes before the show started, the line was like not only all the way down the third floor of Moscone, but like roped around all the way to the back where the end of the sessions were. And so that was kind of hopeless to get into. So that would have been cool to go see. I got to see Demi Lovato in concert, which was kind of cool. But ultimately, again, even like Pallavi said, I barely got to see her. And so definitely a lot of people I wish I could have seen with more time. But yeah, definitely pretty cool overall. I got to hear the governor of California speak, so that was kind of nice. But yeah, definitely, some awesome people to see, but definitely a lot of people I felt like I missed as well.
Meanwhile, our Todd is watching from afar and seeing everything.
Yeah, I saw so many people, thousands of people. I was really excited though when Steve Moe popped up in the True to the Core. I was like, yeah, go Steve. And it would have been great to meet him. I don't think I've met him in person, so he would have been the chap I wanted to meet, I think, out there, probably. But yeah, sadly not this time.
Well, there's always next year, and if you ever need any recommendations on affordable places to stay, I got you. We do end these 5 minutes before the hour, y'all, because we know you've got plenty of places that you could spend your time, but you're spending with us, whether you're working through a flow, whether you're coding, or maybe you're just waking up, or you're about to put the kids to bed. We will be wrapping up a little bit early, but before we do that, I want to just ask a few quick questions to y'all rapid fire, if that's okay. Yay.
Yeah, go for it.
Perfect. So all of y'all are incredible public speakers, and we all know that public speaking is something near and dear to my heart. There were so many sessions, right? 1,500 sessions, but the amount of people that applied was obviously much larger. What's one piece of advice that you would give to someone to help make their abstract stand out to increase their chances of getting selected? And not just it doesn't have to be Dreamforce. It could be one of the amazing community conferences too.
Yeah, one thing I would say is think about what sessions you would want to go to, right? What kind of titles would rope you in? What kind of abstracts would rope you in? What kind of problems are you facing in your org every day? Chances are a lot of other people are facing those same problems. So if you can figure out a topic that's going to solve a problem a lot of people are having and kind of introduce it in a creative, eye-catching way, I think that's going to go really far. Also keeping in mind, what's topical, obviously. Sessions that talked about AI and how to use AI, everyone's kind of interested in right now. So topics like that are top of mind for a lot of people and that you would want to go to, I think, are definitely great places to start.
I love that. Pallavi, same question. What's one tip about writing an abstract that will help stand out and increase your acceptance, whether community conference and or Dreamforce?
I think just think about like some of the common things that people are struggling with or you've struggled with that you think like this session, how beneficial is it going to be? Is it more for you or is it for the people who are coming to your talk? And really keep it about them. Like, what are the takeaways they're going to be able to go action on right away? Those really make an impact. And be authentic.
Yes. Todd?
Yeah, I think the really good points so far. I mean, my one thing would be to say, well, get Louise Lucky to write it for you, because she's the guru at getting talks accepted. Yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, you could look at talks by people who have a lot of talks submitted and see what their abstracts are like. From a community conference organizer point of view, my big thing would just be to say, write some words in there. We have so many submissions that are basically empty, possibly people leaving it to the last minute, I guess. So yeah, put some effort in. The idea of making it actionable is really key, and I think putting in a benefit and a value, and if you can make it really actionable, then that's going to be a winner, for sure.
I love that. And I would just say, just to add on to all that, y'all, there's a few things too, is like, my whole philosophy has always been build your own stage and bring other people up onto it. And so this is really an opportunity for anyone who's always wanted to deliver a talk. Pilot that out, right? You can apply to community conferences, you can apply for Dreamforce, but you can start way before then, right? You can go to a meetup group. There's so many virtual ones. Or you can build your own LinkedIn Live or Twitter Live space, bring in some people up there with you, right? Make it recurring. I think that's so important. The other thing I would say to people too is that most of these applications, from my experience having run conferences myself, is that a lot of it is relationship driven. And so make sure you have those relationships in advance. Work on your personal brand as well. I think those are important. And the other thing I would say too is when you're writing your abstracts, remove the fluff. If you're writing one for a community conference, really think about what some of those key takeaways are. You're not going to be able to fit that into like 200 characters max, but you are going to be able to have more room to breathe and talk about that in a community conference. But definitely think about your brand, build your own stage, apply to some of those virtual groups. Speaking of community conferences, though, as we wrap, y'all, just a reminder that tomorrow, French Dreamin', their abstracts are due tomorrow. So if you've ever wanted to submit anything in your life, now is a great time to do that. Also, check Dreamin', early bird tickets are on sale, so check some of those out as well. I'm going to ask y'all on the panel, I always do this. I want to know, though, this time, what's the one book or podcast that you're listening to right now and why? I'm going to start with Pallavi. You poor thing. I'm so sorry to pick you off of a red eye.
It's Jody's book. I'm not remembering the name of it. Tristan, do you remember?
How to Rock Your Career as a Salesforce Admin.
Yeah, I'm more reading it right now for my admin group to just give them tips and tricks out of it as well, outside of them just hearing my take on things. But that's a really good book. So it's very useful in the consulting workspace.
I love that. And she's working on a sequel, y'all. For anyone who hasn't grabbed a copy, that is one of the best books I read last year. Whatever your role is in the Salesforce ecosystem, or if you're adjacent, it is such a good book. Lots of tangible skills for leading up, understanding requirements, boundary setting, goal setting for the business and alignment. Like I love that book. So thank you for that, Pallavi. Adam, same question. What's the book or podcast you're listening to right now?
So not anything at the moment, but I just finished Gemma Blizzard's book on Kindle. For those who don't know, Gemma, one of the founders of Ladies Be Architects, incredible human being and community contributor. And definitely, I highly recommend that if you get the chance to check it out.
Love, love, love. Todd, same question.
Oh, those are two good answers already. What am I going to say? I'll go with the podcast route then. I've been a long time listener of the Good Day So podcast. They have a Slack community too. A couple of guys, Jeremy and John, run it. They talk about beer and whiskey, all sorts of things, tech, and of course Salesforce as well. Yeah, I love their approach to the ecosystem. Yeah, a couple of really helpful, knowledgeable chaps, and yeah, great community around it as well. So the Good Day Set podcast, definitely recommended.
I am writing that down. This was more for me than it was for you listeners, sorry. but I hope that these were helpful. Right now, I'm one of those people, and y'all have like multiple books, but I'm about to finish up The Race Beat, won the Pulitzer. It's by Gene Roberts and Hank Klibanoff. It's about the press civil rights struggle and awakening of a nation, but it really goes behind the scenes about the civil rights in America and how Black-owned newspapers really impacted the civil rights. It's a really good book. It's called The Race Beat. And then I'm pivoting over to Agile Conversations by Douglas Squirrel and Jeffrey Frederick. It's how to transform conversations, transform your culture. I run a monthly DevOps leadership book club. And so that's available online. Anyone can always join us. Sometimes we have authors come, sometimes we don't, but it's once a month and it's super awesome. Been doing this for almost 3 years now. With that said, y'all, I want to make sure we have a few minutes in between your next meetings. If it's late in your part of the world, we hope that you are having a wonderful evening, and to everyone just starting here on the Pacific, or if you're Pallavi and you're in between time zones and safely home. We want to say thank you so much. For anyone who is recovering from COVID, like myself, give yourself some grace with brain fog. It will come clear. Really appreciate you all tuning in. And we're going to have these monthly, y'all. And for anyone who couldn't listen to the whole thing, we'll share the recording. Adam, Pallavi, Todd, thank you so much. This was so helpful.